Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Crypto Wisdom. In this episode, like you've already seen in the thumbnail, I'll be discussing about what is slippage and what does it mean to you when you're doing transactions on the DEX platforms or the decentralized exchanges. This is Mr. Aslan. Crypto education is my passion, guys. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please ensure that you do your own research before you get into a new token out there in the crypto space and be wary of scams. Now I have a couple of videos which indicates how you can get scammed in Telegram as well as those dust attacks that happen on Trust Wallet. Please do go ahead and check that out in the playlist to know more and improve your awareness in terms of scams. So let's head directly to the basic question of what is slippage. Now I have this Medium article to simplify things and we'll run through this. I'll leave the link to this article as well in the description so you can run through it in detail again if you would like to. But let's go ahead with what exactly is slippage and what does it matter. Now one of the most common pieces of advice any DeFi newcomers receive is watch out for slippage. So what is actually slippage? Imagine wanting to buy 10 apples at the market and seeing that the various apple vendors are selling them for $1 each. That's a cost of $10, right? But what if there was a breaking news that apples cure COVID-19? Preposterous, but yeah, just take it for an example. And the price skyrocketed to $100 an apple. Now, you are out $1,000 for the same 10 apples. When trading crypto, this volatility, that's the indication or the analogy that they're trying to draw in terms of price changes that happen with crypto. Where there's a lot of volatility involved in the asset price that can create such a situation where the executed price is different from the quoted or expected price. Slippage is the expected percentage difference between these two quoted and executed prices. So even more simpler is suppose you wanted to buy a particular crypto token at $10 a piece. Say for example a token A is costing $10 per token. But right now in the market, since a lot of transactions are happening, at the time of your purchase when you click the swap button at Uniswap or Pancakeswap, you could see that the price is showing as $10, but at the exact moment when it is executed in the backend, since there is a total automation here and there is no single person sitting and executing your orders manually, it might take up the price as $10.2 per token because there was a market appreciation that happened at that point of time. Or it might also lead to a profit gain in certain cases where the price might drop down to $9.8 instead of $10 a token, where you might receive a little more. Instead of receiving one token, you would receive 1.01 or 1.02, something like that, right? So on similar grounds, low liquidity can also cause increased slippage, which is why larger orders tend to face higher slippage. This is generally a problem with market orders. When placing limit orders, your trade will only get executed or at above the limit price that you set ideally. But with market orders, you buy at the price at which the market is willing to sell. Now, what ideally happens here is, to put it in a more simpler manner, whenever you see that there is a low amount of liquidity available, the price change that ideally happens is quite huge. Now, this is one area wherein to be really careful about whenever you are buying or transacting any such cryptocurrency which has a very low liquidity in the market. So that's where, to put it in a simple word, the amount of price fluctuation that happens when there is a low liquidity is quite huge for even smaller buys and smaller sells, right? So that's where you need to be a little more careful while you're selecting the slippage. Now let's take an example for Uniswap. I'll take another example for Pancakeswap as well, but how it indicates what slippage is and how it shows up on your swap is what we'll look at right now. Now, as you can see in the screenshot, note that both slippage tolerance and price impact. You can see that the slippage tolerance level is here set to 1% and the price impact percentage is less than or greater than 0.01%, right? So anything above that and your order will fail to execute. The default for Uniswap is 0.5%, but you can set it at any percentage you want. Now, price impact gives you an idea what slippage to actually expect based on the size of the order you are placing and what's going on in the market. This helps you get an idea of how much the desired token you are likely to actually receive once the trade executes. The minimum received indicator is the least amount of tokens that you will receive based on your slippage tolerance. A worst case scenario, anything below the transaction gets automatically cancelled. Now, before we get into the common strategies or my views, what exactly does it mean by this entire note is that whenever you are going ahead and transacting or making any transactions through these swaps, the slippage tolerance plays a very vital role. That too, especially if there is a lot of activity on the specific token, you need to ensure that the slippage is set to a nominal value, which will ensure that the transaction itself will get executed for you. Else, due to the rapid price movement that is happening, be it because of high amount of sales or be it because of high amount of buys, then you wouldn't be able to get your order through. So that's when you see, if you look at a specific token which has a lot of buzz around the market, when the FOMO kicks in and a lot of people are transacting, when you see that there are almost like 1,000 transactions per minute or even 100 transactions per minute too, that is when you need to ensure that your slippage is set to whatever possible value that you can actually go ahead and afford to, right? It's not like you can set a slippage of 50% or even 100%, because that's a little ridiculous, because that's where you tend to lose a lot of your tokens, be it either a buy or a sell. But I would say the maximum slippage that you can look forward to should be somewhere in the range of 8 to 10%, or sometimes in case where you really want to get the token and there is a lot of price movement that's happening, then 15% is what you need to look at. But you need to be a little careful with that as well. That 15% should not be for very smaller buys, because you will end up losing more than what you can actually receive, right? So if you are buying in somewhere, say $1,000 or $10,000 as such, that 15% really matters a lot. But sometimes it is okay to go ahead and let it go because of the potential gains that you might get in the near future. However, when it comes to smaller buys, even a $10 buy, 15%, $1.5, that difference makes a lot. The main reason why I'm saying it in the other direction is that when you are investing a higher amount, you are getting a higher volume of tokens. So even the price movement happens by even a 10%, would be able to get, with all the tokenomics in place, with almost all the tokens that are out there right now, you would definitely be having a better position, and you would be able to make up for those slippage losses much more easily as compared to a smaller person or a smaller investor who is putting in a lower amount in terms of purchasing the token with a higher slippage. So if you are having a lower amount to invest in something and you see that the slippage is pretty high, then it's always good that you wait for the slippage, or probably instead of slippage coming down, it's like you set it manually, but you need to wait for the transactions that are happening to cool down a little and see that what is the right amount of time. So this price impact will be a very good indicator. If you see for the slippage that you have set, the price impact is in green, then it's a good to go slippage tolerance for you. However, if you see that the price impact is quite high, then immediately you should see that your slippage has to be increased, because only if you increase the slippage will your transaction go through. But again, one more thing to note is the amount of price impact. Now, if you have a price impact of 1%, be ready to lose that 1% or more than that 1% because of the transaction as well. Even though you have set the slippage to 5% and you see that the price impact is around 1 or 2%, then you should be ready to lose that much amount of tokens, right? So that's how ideally transactions happen, and that usually occurs in very stages where either the FOMO kicks in and there is a lot of transactions that are happening, there is a lot of volume going on. Those kind of periods is when you need to look into these two aspects. But when you're doing normal regular trading, it ideally doesn't matter much, because almost all of the times you can see that if the block transactions are able to handle that workload, then it's absolutely fine with you in terms of going with whatever the default slippage of 0.5% Uniswap has. Now, there is a bit of a confusion between the transaction tax, not the transaction tax, the tokenomics tax of the tokens and slippage. Now, both are totally different, which I would address in a separate video with certain other details. But understand this, a transaction tax or a certain amount of taxes which are there on the tokenomics part, like say 10% to redistribution, 2% to marketing wallet, and another 3% to the liquidity. All those taxes only kick in after the purchase has happened. Now, slippage is something that would happen during the execution phase of the purchase, right? So there are two different things. So setting your slippage to equivalent amount of your transaction tax or your tokenomics tax doesn't really mean that the transaction will go through. So if you see that the price impact plays a very vital indication here, and even with 0.5% of slippage, you can still get the transaction through, provided the price impact is less than or greater than 0.01%, right? So not more than that. So I'm sorry, it's less than 0.01%. I'm bad with mathematics again. I need to get back to my basics. So moving on, I'll just take a quick example on Pancakeswap right now. So coming to Jetstar, I just got this open, so I've just opened this up. Let's take this transaction. All right. So this is a recent transaction that has happened right now. It's for 6,500 Jetstar with 4.85 worth BNB. Now let's have a quick look at this transaction on the Ether and the BSC scan. If you look at this, you see that the actual amount of tokens that the person has received after the tokenomics tax has kicked in is 5,986. Now, what would be the ideal slippage for this particular person? Now, it would definitely work out with 0.5, because if you look at the amount of transactions that's happening, it's quite nominal. You do not see a lot of transactions or activity with say 100 to 200 or even 500 transactions per second or a couple of seconds. That's not the kind of activity that we are currently seeing right now. So the slippage with 0.5% would definitely work. Now in Pancakeswap, the same thing goes. Once you connect your wallet, you can see that the price impact is there. The minimum receipt will give you an indication, and here is the amount of BNB that you need to go ahead and give. Now if I go ahead and give 4.85, that gives me a total of 6,431, but minimum received is showing as 6,399. That's because of the slippage. How do you set this on Pancakeswap? You just hit the cogwheel button over here. You can see the amount of gas fees that you want to pay, either standard fees and the slippage over here. If you want to manually set the slippage, just click on it. By default, it's set to 0.5. Click on it and say, I want 10% slippage. All right. So this is what is how you set your slippage manually based on whatever the transactions that you want to do. Now, if you set this, what happens at the time of purchase, it will look for any price movement within 10% up or down than the current value of Jetstar for BNB. Then it will go ahead and execute the transaction if you are in the green zone. In case the price movement happens more than 10%, then the order does not execute. It will be a failure. You would just be having to pay a small amount of gas fee. That is what you will get a transaction error message stating this transaction could not be executed due to slippage or stuff like that, right? So provided there is a lot of activity, it's always good that you set the slippage to a nominal value. Start from somewhere around 5% and then start moving up the ladder. That's something that would definitely come with experience, guys. It's not something that we can hard-codedly say that there are some times where transactions might get executed. I have personally experienced them with 1% slippage, even though there is a lot of activity. But there are cases where I had to pay a 15% slippage for certain tokens when I had to purchase, even though the activity was quite low. That's mainly because of the liquidity that was low for that specific token, right? So there are a lot of factors, and that can only be the exact value of slippage can only be determined by experience. It cannot be set right by any person intact, right? So this is all about slippage, and I'll be coming out with another video when compared to what is slippage and what is transaction tax separately, or I would say rather than transaction tax, I would say tokenomics tax, because transaction tax ideally people think it's gas fees, right? So I'll come down to that concept in terms of tokenomics tax, how does it apply, and slippage, how does it play its part in another separate video. This is it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have fun and take care.